To follow up on all of my colleagues' great words and to wrap up our delegation presentations today. So I'm here to talk about Montessori philosophy and the implications of what that means for us as educators and as parents. So just to give you a little bit additional background about myself, I do reside in Dallas, Texas, where I was born and raised. I was raised in a traditional Punjabi household. My parents, and my mom is in the top right picture with me there, both are retired. Mom was a registered nurse and midwife. My father was an electrical and mechanical engineer, and they wanted the best for my sister and I. So naturally, when I was 2 years old, I was enrolled in Montessori school, and that began my Montessori journey. I successfully transitioned later in my schooling to traditional education, university, where I completed a bachelor's in business administration, went on to work in the business world, but did not feel that I was living my cosmic task. And so I went back to education, where I felt this pull. You can go back to the first slide still. Thank you. And I completed a master's in early childhood education, where I was reminded about my passion, my love, and my roots in Montessori. So I went back and completed an AMS Montessori credential at the early childhood and at the administrator level. Went on to found my own school, which is hitting 25 years next year, and started the very important work of teacher education. And I serve as the executive director at the North Texas Montessori Institute. As Nidhi said, I joined the AMS board of directors, AMS being my membership organization, my home as a Montessorian 7 years ago. And 45 years after I started that Montessori journey, I am so excited and honored to become the AMS board of directors president this March. And why do I tell you all this? I tell you all this because I'm here today because I was a Montessori child. It was the most impactful decision my parents could have made for me. And so as educators and as parents, I think it's very important that we don't forget that and the impact we're making each and every day in a child's life. Naturally, when I became a parent, and my husband and my 3 children in the top left, they started Montessori school as young as possible, and it has defined them as well. And I see that in them and the people that they are becoming, and the contributors to society that they're becoming. And I'm proud to be a Montessori educator and a Montessori parent, and I'm sure many of you fulfill similar roles in your life. So today I'm going to talk very briefly, bring together all the points that we've heard so far, and just talk about some implications on our work. So very briefly, I'm going to talk about some brain development and how the brain develops over time. And your educators, your parents, these are important things to keep top of mind, because whenever I ask myself what's going on with a child, whether it's mine or someone else's, I come back to child development, I come back to Montessori philosophy, and I find the answer. So I think often we get lost in the day-to-day of our lives and our work, and we need to reconnect with some of these principles. And they're ones we've already talked about today, and you even brought up in our discussion. So we know the brain grows and changes from infancy to adulthood. The brain develops through hands-on, meaningful experiences, and early childhood experiences are crucial for brain development. So we see neural connections forming in early development, very sparse in newborns. Our connections develop rapidly through experiences, and by age 2, which I had the opportunity to see classrooms at the campuses today and see the important work happening at that age. By age 2, the brain is densely connected. Pruning happens. What does pruning mean? Those are where those connections, it's a use it or lose it. If they're not used, they go away. And I think Gina said this, and Mahir said it, and Jeffrey said it, the importance of repetition. The more we do something, the stronger those connections become. And often I hear from parents in my program, my child keeps doing the same work over and over again. And I say, yes, isn't that a beautiful thing? Repetition. We're strengthening those connections. And if you have parents that ask about that, or if there are parents in the room, remind yourself of these things. If we don't use the connections, they get pruned away. So we have all these connections at 6 years of age, and by 14 we've pruned back on those, which is a good thing. We've made the brain more efficient. There's stress that happens at all stages of life. And I think about this as a parent, because just as my parents wanted for me, I want for my children. I want them to learn. I want them to grow. Academics are very important to me, but I don't want to create additional stress for my children. And I think as parents, that's very easy for us to do, because we want them to work, we want them to learn. But we need to be reminded that stress affects cognitive capacity, and balance, as in everything in life, is key. So as a parent, I think about, what do I want for my child? Who do I want them to become? It'd be great if they were a doctor, an engineer, an attorney. I want them to be successful in life. But more than that, I want them to be good people. I want them to be kind people. I want them to have good values and character. And I want them to know how to survive independently as human beings. The world is rapidly changing. And so our children need to know academic concepts, but more importantly, they need to know how to learn. And Jeffrey talked about executive functioning early today, but those key executive functions, planning, time management, organization, working memory, self-control, flexibility, problem solving, effective communication. That is what our children need to be successful as they grow up and develop in today's world. So we've talked about the planes of development. Briefly going to touch on planes of development and human tendencies, because again, they're so fundamental to our work and our understanding of the needs of children. The planes of development for infancy, childhood, adolescence, and maturity. So infancy, they crave physical independence, focus on self. The motto is, help me do it for myself. All the important characteristics of the first plane of development. We'll move on to the second plane of development. They crave mental independence, and they focus on family and friends. The motto is, help me to think for myself. Third plane of development, we get into adolescence. Sometimes a little bit more of a challenging age. I have 3 in my household in adolescence, and it's super fun. It's challenging. So I go back to this diagram and I remind myself of where they are in their development. They crave social independence. They focus on society more than they focus on necessarily their family. The motto is, help me find myself. Fourth plane of development, maturity. They crave spiritual and moral independence. They focus on their global community. And the motto is, help me to support myself. So quickly into the human tendencies. And when we were doing the exercise earlier, someone said, the thing I see the most, that I identify the most on this list, are the human tendencies. And human tendencies are the natural, universal traits that drive behavior and learning throughout life. Our human tendencies, and by the way, these are pictures from my school community or from our teacher education program, because I wanted to connect you and give you a visual to some of the work that happens at other programs. And briefly to go through these very quickly. You're going very quickly, that's good. These are all the human tendencies. Communication, very important. Creation, imagination. If we went too fast, I can share this later too. To fulfill the spiritual life, exploration, not just for the child, but also for the adult. So we know the role of human tendencies in Montessori education is to facilitate exploration, to promote independent learning, and to support emotional growth. Very important for, again, us as educators and for us as parents. So what are the implications for us as educators? And again, a lot of these concepts we've talked about, but the prepared environment, starting with us as the teacher, we heard that earlier. Observation. Observation is key. Again, as an educator and as a parent. Guiding, not directing. I think it's so easy to tell our children what to do instead of stepping back, restraining ourselves as the adult, and guiding them instead. Fostering independence, modeling grace and courtesy. How important is that? Individualized instruction, and encouraging intrinsic motivation. Now let's talk about us with the parent hat on. The role of the parent. Again, be observers, not directors. Very hard. Very hard to do, and often an opportunity for growth for us as adults. Allow freedom within limits. That's what's so beautiful about Montessori, freedom within discipline. Prepare the environment, even at home. We're preparing that environment for our children. Respect the child's developmental pace. We've talked a lot about earlier today, even before we got here, we were talking about respect of the child and how that is first and foremost in everything we do, respecting the child. Encouraging intrinsic motivation and modeling calm, respectful communication. We're role models for the children. So everything we do, they see, whether that's in the classroom or at home. So I love the way we started today, because as your speech was being written in India, my presentation was being written in Dallas, and we picked the same quote. So we are truly connected in our work. So the way we started is the way I'll bring us back home, and that the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the children are now working as if I did not exist. Thank you.